With the launch of Fortnite Chapter 2 came for the first time ever a brand new Battle Royale map, something that up until its release many players had been asking for a very significant amount of time. This map was a major step up from the original in every department, introducing brand new mechanics, vehicles, as well as a plethora of phenomenal new and returning locations that made for a near perfect experience of a brand new overhauled map. While the Chapter 2 map now doesn't necessarily look special when you compare it to the more recent seasons that we've gotten, this major shift in map design not only was a huge step in the right direction, but also paved the way for future maps to function similarly with all of these new quality of life changes. The POIs for this map stack up to be just as good, if not better, than most of the new locations that we've seen in the past few years, and I would go as far as to say that it's one of the best Season 1 chapter maps that we've gotten of all time. However, over the span of 8 seasons, people would grow to resent the Chapter 2 map, so much so that Epic would end up ending the chapter prematurely on Season 8 Chapter 2 instead of going to Season X like the prior chapter. Negativity surrounding Chapter 2 was something that started very early on, as Epic had made no updates to either their map or loot pool over the entirety of Chapter 2 Season 1, which also happened to be one of the longest seasons of all time, spanning up to around 128 days total. This understandably annoyed a lot of players, especially since we came off the back of Season X, which, while not a great season, had a new map change every single update, as well as new content every other week. This meant that Chapter 2 Season 2 would have to deliver, because many people by this point were beginning to lose interest in playing Fortnite. Luckily for Epic, Chapter 2 Season 2 was very well received, with most players today putting it in their top 5 season list. This season is unique when compared to recent seasons because it managed to add 5 very strong locations to the map without affecting anything else, which for a map that was already thriving with loot, made for an even better experience. While these map changes to some may be smaller looking for a season update, it added much needed loot in areas that were previously lacking, as well as being POIs that were heavily landed because of how strong of locations they were. Unfortunately for these POIs, not one of them would survive the launch of Season 3, with all of them either being worse or nerfed to the point where they're unlandable. Because the main focus of Season 3 was the increased water level from the flood, POIs like the grotto got filled with water and were never accessible again, with the only one still being decent was the Agency, which was now rebranded as the Authority. On top of this, the flooding on the map was something that most players would come to resent, as it made fights incredibly awkward and served no purpose other than covering up POIs that sat lower than the water level. There was this season the promise of getting brand new locations unveiled as the water lowered over time. However, apart from the Fortilla, which was added at the beginning of the season, the only other significant change was Coral Castle, which was one of the worst POIs on the Chapter 2 map. Now, I can't fault Season 4 for the removal of the Fortilla, as there was no real reason to land this POI anymore, as they had removed all of the mythics and pretty much nerfed it into the ground. However, for whatever reason, this season decided to nerf the Authority, which was already a bootleg agency, making it the second worst POI on the map. Season 4 revamped a portion of Pleasant with the launch of the season, which made it a better POI. However, the more significant change was the early season addition of the Stark Industries biome, which to date is one of the biggest mid-season map changes of all time. This POI was phenomenal and was placed perfectly on the map, as it affected a very dead area that prior to the season wasn't very good. This POI offered an interesting aspect due to its elevation. Because of the bulk cutout style shape for this biome, it made rotating into and out of the POI very difficult, as you had to be funneled in and out through zip lines. However, the unfortunate thing is that even though this location was incredibly unique, Epic decided to remove it the very next season by reverting most of the area that it took up, as well as adding a significantly worse named location in its place, the Colosseum. Will you cut that out? By this point, you're likely noticing a common trend with Epic's map-making decisions. They will add a set of locations one season only for them to get nerfed, reverted, or completely removed from the game the following season. The problem with this is it shows a lack of map evolution over time. The Chapter 1 map had great map evolution because every time a new landmass would make its way into the game, it would stay regardless of how the next season was themed or what POIs it decided to introduce. You don't necessarily have to focus on one corner of the map every season, but you should allow the changes you make to see future seasons to show a better sense that the map matures with these updates. Regardless of this, even though people liked the changes to Salty becoming a variant of Tilted, it and the Colosseum POI, which replaced Stark Industries, as well as the rest of the desert, were once again completely removed and replaced with something brand new. At least if they decided to replace these POIs with something good, they could warrant removing them to an extent. However, once again we get another set of trash POIs that replace ones added from the prior season. During this chapter, it should be noted that most of the changes to the map have affected the center, leaving pretty much every POI POI that was here from the beginning of the chapter mostly unchanged. Season 7 specifically is an interesting example of this because when you look at its map and compare it to the Season 1 map of the same chapter, there is little to no difference whatsoever. Season 8 is the only season not to add a new POI, and I think the main reason behind this was due to the fact that Epic wanted to end the chapter prematurely instead of continuing for a 10-season chapter. I don't think it's outlandish to say that there's a good possibility that if people had been more positive about Epic's laziness towards the game, we likely would have seen a very different looking Season 8. Season 8 is a very good example of a very rushed to the end season, with the main new location, Cube Town, looking incredibly unfinished by design, and the only other real map changes during this season being a very minuscule amount of debris scattered in random places on the map, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you take into consideration how large the mothership was and the fact that it was destroyed directly above the island. If this isn't enough information by itself, the live event POI was very strange by design, being a pyramid made up of a bunch of smaller cubes. If you compare this to a more recent event like Collision, you can very clearly tell that Epic had more time to go through and design this device being used for this event. While I went a little bit on a side tangent there, I have my own personal theory as to why Epic Games didn't change much of the map throughout its 8 seasons of Chapter 2. Overall, I think Epic was afraid of upsetting people by creating too much change again. They wanted the base map itself to stay the same because they can only remember the people complaining when POIs such as Dusty, Greasy, Factories, Anarchy, and many more locations were removed over time. However, they lack the understanding that without change, you don't have the opportunity to create these phenomenal memories through nostalgia. People generally aren't very nostalgic for Chapter 2's map because it really never changed and is viewed by most people as this massive blur of random POIs that would appear and disappear each season. Epic never gave anyone time to enjoy these changes because the map never really evolved as the chapter progressed. The interesting thing that can be learned, however, is that if the community voices its honest opinion about the state of the game rather than ignoring it, Epic will respond. This is most prominently shown with the end of Chapter 2 coming 2 seasons sooner because of how negatively received the latter half of the chapter was. If people continue to complain about issues surrounding the game, Epic eventually will notice, making it incredibly important for you and me to critique this game when it does something wrong. As of the time of I'm recording this video, I just hit 100 subscribers, and I really want to thank you guys for that. This type of content is something that I've wanted to do for a very long time, and it's something that I feel is very important. So the fact that you guys enjoy it makes me incredibly happy. I would like to know what your guys' personal favorite map is from really any chapter. My personal favorite map is Chapter 1 Season 8. I feel the map changes during that season, as well as just the fact that it retains every change from the past, makes it kind of this perfect overall map. Anyways, thank you for watching and have a great day.